start with my newest book, which was just published June 1st.
Yes.
Is my voice strong enough?
Yes.
Yes,
All right, good.
for some of us, let's see, can everybody hear?
Oh, yes.
It's called Streaming Consciousness. But I wanted to illustrate at first because this is my hobby, I'm not a great watercolorist. This is what I used to look like. My husband says barely recognizable, but he still loves me, and that's all for that piece of art. So I'm going to read Streaming Consciousness, and I'm also going to point out that you should look again at the cover. I mean, I have a book called Art, Passion, Poetry, but I do have to explain the art part of my poetry. This is a painting in oil that I did when I was in my 30s and had a good place to paint in oils. I have a huge house, but no good place to paint in oils. So I switched 2 years ago to watercolor and am learning how to paint in watercolor. Because I feel that whatever we learn as we age makes us younger, even if others laugh at us. Now, knowing that I was going to do streaming consciousness, I painted 100 streams and had decided that this stream would be the cover. You can see it's a fairly fast-flowing stream with pink flowers and orange flowers. And my husband looked at it and all my other stream paintings, and he said, "Nope, you've got the best cover for streaming consciousness over your bathtub." And he went into my bathroom and chose this one because, he said, the little tugboats puffing up blocks. This is all done with a palette knife. The little tugboats puffing up streams of memory that are wafting out on the Hudson River. This is the Hudson River, where we honeymooned actually in Brooklyn. No one honeymoons in Brooklyn. But he said that's the best cover. So my husband rules where covers are concerned. I rule where poetry is concerned. So the first poem is on page 1 in this book, and it's called Streaming Consciousness, the title. What causes me to think, ponder, and reflect, or in retrospect, to hint at anything in nature real, any past experience that helped me better feel how time, which flowing fast, had set its seal. Reality? Was that what streaming consciousness by my river's bank revealed? Or just what my too partial, perverse memory concealed? Were all my life's impressions natural phenomena, or dreams high-tossed, sprayed upon these rocks, and then quite lost? There, streaming on a river bearing natural debris, how could so much substantial imagined by me be? And was this stream empirical? Did it exist? Or had low clouds above its surface bathed my memory in mist? This stream, these whirlpools, I better hold this up again because I think it's more appropriate. These wild flowers on its banks were both lyrical and empirical. Sensory perception had my neurons missed. Could I have followed this stream back to its source by some miracle, would it have changed my course? And there I was thinking, believe it or not, of Robert Frost, who has a very famous poem about two roads diverging.
Yellow wood.
Yes, in a yellow wood. Thank you very much. My memory isn't as good as it used to be. Where my passion poetry was. I didn't expect anyone to come, so we scattered stuff around because Dina said probably nobody will come. We have filled your Barbara. There's so much goes on here. So much goes on here, I know. And the people who just came in, I would like them to just hold these books and follow if they want to. No obligation. Some people do like.
I have to be sure.
That's fine, but I'd like people to feel comfortable. Poetry is very difficult. Nobody knows that better than I. My next poem is called Aspiration, and it's on the very next page, page 2. And I have no pictures for aspiration. To be ever on the brink of winning, however small to others seems the prize, is yet to feel that something grand's beginning and that our future in our present lies. Striving for perfection will sometimes be offensive to those who do not care to strive. Do not suppose that you must be defensive when your fondest goals or projects do not thrive. To be often on the verge of grasping, but never to bring home the golden cup, does not prove your dream was not worth clasping, or that you won't one day sweep it up. The greatest lives are lived by dreamers, and dreams may give the ordinary strength. Those unproductive may often be great schemers, who to succeed will go to any length. But to go to any lengths, no worthy measure of human aspirations or of worth. The most attainable of all man's pleasure is to keep on dreaming while we're yet on earth. Page 3 of Streaming Consciousness is called River. And I have a picture of a river, if I can lay my hands on it. Yes. It's a small picture, but it is one I'm very fond of because it is very peaceful, unlike my brooks and streams, which are rushy. And I love this particular small picture, which took about 45 minutes to paint. I don't like things that take a lot of time. River. A river winds from here to there and will abide most anywhere along its banks when weary of its own inexorable flow. I know that reeds and marshes do exist to shelter river currents randomly to hide. No river but gives periodic thanks for respite by its own quite tangled flanks, wherein live minnows, fish, frogs, brush. There a river can find respite, hush. Its waters at the center onward rush, while the river's sides take time out from currents. Tides that hurry rivers on from town to town, but leave no time for them to settle down to rest. A river does its best if before it finds the sea, it takes an opportunity to stop and just to be. A river is not so very unlike you and me. Does anyone have a comment they'd like to make so far on any poem or this poem?
I'm thinking of the Mississippi Delta.
Yes?
When it gets down to towards the Gulf, there's a lot of buildup of silt. And doesn't that act as a bulwark to the current of the river? Slow it down, perhaps?
Just like a bend in the river slows the
Yes.
river down. And that's what I mean. We need bends in our rivers, the ones that we call our streams of consciousness. Because if we keep rushing like the central current, well, you know what happens. We get all in a tizzy, at least I do, and we need time to think and reflect. And I was thinking a river might, yes.
Like the Coca-Cola commercial of years ago, the pause that refreshes.
Bingo, you got it.
I was wondering more about yourself. When you were contemplating the river, did that thought occur to you how very similar it is to us, as you say? I mean, is that what happened?
I don't know how to describe the processes of my mind. My husband's been working on it for 59 years.
Different part of the mind, I think.
I used to write academic history books. And when I retired from teaching and writing about the Catholic and Protestant Reformation and Pierre Bayle and other junk like that, which I dearly loved at the time, I said, now is my chance. I'm going to do creative writing because my parents said, you can't make a living being a writer. And so now that I haven't made a living being a teacher, I get a chance to not make a living being a writer. And I'm having a ball. Well, so much. Yes, Jim?
I'm guessing these are sonnets. Are these, some of them are sonnets, is that right?
I label every sonnet a sonnet.
You do. Okay.
And I will be reading a sonnet, I think, if I get through these.
Okay. Well, what I wanted to say is that the last two lines in each of these three poems has the punchline. It has the observation of what human nature is like or what nature is like. And I'm not wedded to the sonnet form, but just saying that, you know, you take us on this journey through the ideas and the images of the poem, and then at the end there's a kind of closure to punctuate.
Yes, I think many poems do have a wind-up. Sonnets do, triolets and rondelles, which are Renaissance forms, do. But I do think the thing to think about when you're reading my poetry is that it winds up often in places far from the title. I'm sorry about that, but that's how my mind works. The title only suggests what's going on in my perfervid mind.
I just wanted to ask,
Pardon?
Could I say something?
Yeah, sure.
The problem of consciousness is foremost now in science. You know, how does the brain work? How do we see things? What, you know, the total problem of consciousness is right at the forefront of modern thinking, and I wondered how that may have affected you or related to your thoughts on consciousness. Was it just from in yourself, or was it part of the general movement to understand one of the great problems of of science?
That's a good question. I have as a datum to tell you that the term stream of consciousness dates from 1857. And of course, I'm a reader of novels, and my favorite novels are 20th century novels. Henry James, Virginia Woolf, Saul Bellow, God bless him, wherever he is. They were all deeply into stream of consciousness, analyzing their reactions to the world around them and other people's reactions to them, and to the meaning of life as a whole. And to me, that's what streaming consciousness means. I'm 78. I've had a lot of time to think about where I have been and where I am going. And I think Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway, where she spends a whole day reflecting on her life while preparing for a party, is a nugget that lets me concentrate my own thoughts on streaming consciousness. She rehearses her whole life over and over in the course of, 370 pages. So even though I've written a novel, and it's much longer than that, I stream of consciousness like nobody's business.
But I really think that that's what writers do, and that's what poets do. And if you read Alice Munro's Dear Life, you know that she's reflecting in her short stories all of the things that she's been through, because she's quite elderly. And that's what writers do.
That's what writers do. That's why they have so many enemies. The next...
I wanted to make just one
Oh, sure.
unintellectual observation or question. I noticed the rhymes that do exist sometimes come from the end of a sentence, with the middle, or three in a row, or, are you consciously putting in words that do rhyme?
I'm a musician. I was trained as a linguist. I speak several languages, and I have been taking piano lessons in classical music since 5. So all I can say is I am very musically oriented. Language has music, believe it or not. And I love German because I find it musical, and everyone else says, how can you love German when you know Italian much better? But I love classical music. I even love some jazz and Cole Porter. But I'm very musically oriented, so I don't really care where the rhyme words come. I'm very free form, and I wasn't trained in creative writing at Stanford. I was trained as a Reformation historian. So I'm a mishmash, and you must expect mishmash in my poetry. Just a warning. The next poem, let me make sure I'm on the right page, is page 12. And page 12 has no picture, but it comes from, or is suggested by, T.S. Eliot, the American from St. Louis who became a British subject. His poem, Prufrock's Love Song, and I call my poem Regarding Prufrock's Love Song. This is in sonnet form. T.S. Eliot did not write his Prufrock in sonnet form. In fact, his title was different. It was called The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, as you can see up here. But I put it in sonnet form and did it a lot faster. Prufrock asked, should he stroll upon a beach? Every human being needs a mission. His question was appropriate for each. No one need seek a royal commission. A love song is not all we're here to sing. Some sacrifice will enrich everyone. We needn't wear white flannels to hail spring. On few beaches now are flannels done. To nourish those who famish, let us try to feed the hungry as we do ourselves. When they have dined, a peach may satisfy. Better yet, are canned goods on their shelves. Our lives do make us come and go, but life is painting hope and fear, like Michelangelo. And in the last part of T.S. Eliot's poem, you may recall a group of rather common, ordinary folks are eating hors d'oeuvres and drinking champagne and speaking as they come and go of Michelangelo. Why? Not because they're art historians, but because it was the stylish thing to do, and proof rock is stylish. He wears white flannels and thinks, shall I stroll upon a beach today? Shall I dare to eat a peach today? I mean, who lives like that? Today we don't, but then they did. So, any other comments on proof rock? Yes?
Can I comment not on this one, but another piece by T.S. Eliot? I know maybe it's out of order.
It's also the proof rock poem.
Go ahead.
Well, a long time ago, I remember a line from a T.S. Eliot poem where it says, dead from the neck down.
I like that.
As a very young man, I harbored. Can you give me your explanation of it, see whether it coincides with what I have thought for decades?
Well, T.S. Eliot, I don't know everything there is to know about his biography. I'll be honest, I've read The Wasteland, of course, and there are lines in it that are both delightful to an ancient historian. I, amongst other things, taught ancient history. T.S. Eliot was a very repressed sort of young man. And after all, Edwardian and Victorian men and women in spades were very repressed. So dead from the neck down would suggest to me that he didn't dare express, shall I say it, his libido. That's a guess. Now, if I'm not right, sue me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next poem is on the opposite page, poem 12, and it doesn't have a picture either. It's very romantic. And it's, I think, a testimony to aging. Sorry about that. Love storm passing. Love, preceded by a gentle rain that grew into a major storm, engulfed the desert of my heart, causing ecstasy, but blowing over, lasting pain. Oh, love, it had been best if you'd blown across the land. Inundated fertile hearts, left mine unshaded on dry sand. For love, there's nothing I've to offer you. I'm old and used and dry. When past this gust, you, tossed by lust, will see my heart's but dust and thrust on to the river. My desiccated heart and I will quiver. Standing by life's window pane to see if further signs of rain may yet return again. In other words, hope springs eternal. Well, okay. No pictures on that. Any questions? next poem is on page 13. Oh, how convenient, page 13? No, that's the one I just gave you, sorry. It's on page 17, and it's called Sea of Life. And I do have a picture on that one, just a sec. I'll turn it up. It's in here, I think. In fact, I think I have two.
15 is Sea of Life.
I may have even three. Anyway, the rivulet is this. This is a very simple little painting of a brook, a rivulet. I grew up in the mountains of the Adirondacks, upstate New York, and frequently went and waded in water like this while my mother picked bittersweet and pussy willows on the shore. And this is more western a scene. I think it's California, but I can't be sure. And perhaps you could put this in the, water running out to sea, trying to find its way to the sea. I think this poem will illustrate some of those themes, and if not, I lied.
Barbara, it's number 15.
It's number 15, and it's on page 17. Thank you very much. Sea of Life, a sonnet. My sea of life was once a rivulet in which I splashed pink toes. I can't recall how young I was, how small, but didn't forget the joy of it that did me then enthrall. Ah, life raced on, my rivulet grew wide. I think I'll just hold up the wide rivulet. My rivulet grew wide, I plunged into a river broad and deep. I embraced all that there did me betide, and married one whose company still keep. He's in a brown shirt in the last row. This flow enhanced its width, grew deeper still, and rushed us all towards strands, beaches, of black, of gold, an ocean vast before us. Seagulls shrill displayed our destiny as we grew old. Those streams of youth, those tides of truth not lost, have led to ocean views. Looking for ocean views, yes. Strands of gold, ocean views, have led to ocean views well worth being tossed. Any questions on that? Would anyone who just came in appreciate having the books to look at? We're reading first from this book.
Thank you.
You're welcome, and I'll announce the page.
Does that last line mean, being tossed? Is that a
Yes, what is the meaning of the word
throwaway?
tossed
Are
here?
we talking about a throwaway line?
Yes, I have a recycling bin outside my back door, and when I finish my Wheaties, I toss the empty box. Tossed can be the end, but it can also be emotional tribulation that gives us a deeper kind of perception on what we have just gone through.
But does that comma refer to what's being tossed, the old age ocean view or the youth stream?
Now let me read the poem lines again. Those streams of youth, those tides of truth not lost, have led to ocean views. That's our intellectual growth and development.
Fair enough.
Well worth being tossed. The experience, which may indeed involve our being thrown into the tides, was well worth it. In other words, this is perhaps not well stated, but it has a double entendre, two meanings. When we have lived and lived intensely and it's almost over, we may still find it was worthwhile on reflection. So as I say, I'm not always an easy poet to understand, but I'll say this. I'm a heck of a lot easier to understand than modern poets who have no rhyme, no meter, do not use a very good vocabulary, often very vulgar, and you never know if they're talking about their own private gut reaction or something else. And I've been to too many of those.
I wasn't being critical, I was simply misconstrued the word.
No, you might very well deserve to have misconstrued the word. The thing about being a poet is we're never really sure of ourselves, even though we talk a good line. So, you know, you just sometimes have to play out a little slack to me. The next poem is on page 20 in the Green Book, and it is called Wandering. Wandering in youth is one of its reserved pleasures, exploring the world step by stare, stare by look, risk by chance, wandering in light of childish dreams, the future unforeseen seems strange, wandering, exploration, discovering oneself. It's on page 20 in the Green Book. Is youth's prerogative and most relevant exchange. Wandering in middle age is not a bad thing. Spared surprise, remembering mistakes within the realm of your correction, opens your eyes to misplaced affection for poor recipients of dreams lost or dulled, all but forgotten and ignored, other lives, other lovers, otherwise. Wandering in old age, not recommended, journey soon ended, cannot be amended to include the road not taken. Pace Frost. Yes, I was impressed by Frost. Be honest, even if it could, is there any point it should? As for your memoir, half written, half recalled, unimproved, who reading it or hearing it would be truly moved?
Your grandkids.
I'm in the middle of writing one right now, so that's a reproach. Which of life's equations did you try to solve and solved? What from all that, save possessions, on posterity devolved? And if all that escaped your thought and your intention, what further wanderings now deserve attention? Yours was no uncommon journey. Stop wandering. Reap what you have known without lament for the unsown. So, any questions on that? I think it sums up our age group, but nevertheless. The next one from this book is Catholic. Is there anyone Catholic here? I didn't think so, but
No, there is. We have several Catholics who live here.
I thought there might.
Maybe not in the room, but
I'm a great art lover, and when I was in St. Francis of Assisi Basilica, I noticed on the lower level in Italy, at Assisi, a fresco of St. Francis preaching to the birds. St. Francis, of course, has a sweet expression. He has his little book in front of him. There is a little branch, and on it sit little birds. You can tell they're really listening, like children in 3rd grade when they're getting a story read to them. And this is what I wrote about St. Francis. Preaching to the Birds, page 23 in the Green Book. St. Francis of Assisi preached a sermon to the birds. They clung unto their slender bough, as also to his words. It's likely that St. Francis felt akin to every creature, but was it possible that God would make a bird a preacher? This fresco of the scene abounds in calm solemnity. May we, like birds, go out upon a limb to win a saint's indemnity? Or like St. Francis, find our faith by taking God for granted, adhering to the fragile branch on which our souls are planted. Anybody Jewish here? The next poem is on page 24. Moses. Standing on this mountain, he viewed the distant plain, remembered how many sacrifices he had made, his own and others, to reach this height, Mount Nebo. The plain, he felt, held promise, was promised, but their gain would also disappoint them. He, already disappointed by his truncated journey, would leave them to their tortuous history, glorious mystery, endlessly enduring pain.
Very good. Like that.
I sent this to my oldest friend, a college student. Well, she was a college student. We were freshmen together at the University of Wisconsin, and she's an Orthodox Jew and very observant, very. And she said, please send copies. Her son is the head of the Department of Judaica at Santa Cruz, and she was going to make him distribute it to all his students. The next poem is to my husband, and it's on page 26, and my husband is in the back. And I don't know, I like to cheer him up because sometimes he gets out of good cheer. Living with me would do it to anyone. Love, though our union has withstood the test of every kind of strain on loyalty, I cannot say why you have taken so much pleasure from it, as if I were royalty, a queen. You tell me every day and again tonight, you are my knight, that every year, and more than 4 and 50 have flown by, that I, whose flaws you never mention, still give you cause for such delight, attention. If I were indeed a monarch, and not just that of your still loving heart, I could not bestow upon you any badge, office, worldly treasure greater than that one prerogative I do possess in saying, of all royal privilege, you were the start, the one and only indispensable, most regal part. I'm only going to read one more from this book because I want to read some from the other book. And I'm going to read a poem which is on the very next page. And it might make your hair stand on end because it made every Jewish middle-class person's hair stand on end in 1960 when Philip Roth, wait, I have a painting of him in old age. He's published 30-some novels. I've read 27 or 8. Some I detest, but I did read Portnoy's Complaint. When this poem was brought to the world, or this book rather, it's my poem, his novel. When Portnoy's Complaint, a novel by Philip Roth, was published in 1960, people said, there is a self-hating Jew. He is a bad man. He is not to be used as a pattern for any young Jewish man growing up, or listened to, shades, because his language is so bad, by any young Shana Madel, beautiful young woman, virgin of course, Madel, virgin. So I wrote The Problem with Portnoy.
What page are we?
Pardon?
28.
We are on page 28 in the Green Book.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The problem with Portnoy was so complex. It had, of course, to do with sex. It had to do with Portnoy's dong because he jerked off all day long. It had to do with Portnoy's mom, who had no insight into him, of his digestion, of his stool, of what he did outside of school.
Just trying to make that right.
Or maybe not. What can we know? The reader, plunged in swirling mist, the patient young Alex sees only his psychiatrist. The age, the era. Remember Holden? Boys like Alex and him grew up when sex was golden. But was sex golden in their youth? Perhaps it was in young men's dreams, all wet. For girls, it was uncouth, let's not forget. The absolute historic truth, the only one on which you could not punt, was quite triangulated. Male, female, sorry about this, cunt. And yet, it wasn't Portnoy who alone was ill. All society was infected. Corruption was the serum into almost all injected, widely dispersed, roundly cursed, the Depression, World War II, recovery sought and found a universal discovery. The libido existed. The truth, wrath was wrath. Our values were corrosive. Our world, literally after Hiroshima, explosive. Then newsreels of the Holocaust, racism, lynching, misogyny, all rife. So after Alex, quote, shot the bastard cop, unquote, his psychiatrist said, now we may perhaps begin on life. I have to tell you that when I was very small, my first doctor was a Jewish refugee from Germany, and he spoke just like that. It scared the daylights out of me, but I was only 3, and then a German accent was frightening. I'm going to shift books now.
When Portnoy's Complaint came out, our temple ran classes on discussion and discussing the meaning of his diatribe against his mother in particular.
Oh, yes.
And it was really, everybody came and everybody took part in the discussion. It was really kind of a moment.
Yes. Who here is not a Jewish mother? We have all been Jewish mothers.
We're Jewish mothers.
Or whatever, even if our children were females, as in my case. I mean, it was a book that made a statement about an era. And I often write in the rest of this on books that make statements on eras. I have I have poems on Pete Seeger, on Dante's Inferno. I have a lot in here, but I want to read from the other book now because I really am very fond of my first book, and
Can I say something about the Jewish mother?
absolutely.
What's the difference between a Rottweiler and a Jewish mother? The Rottweiler dog will eventually let go.
I knew there was a punchline there. And I knew it was going to be a good punchline, too. Now, I have a program that goes along with my book, so I can't use my own book. Art, Passion, Poetry. I painted this. It's a scene in Switzerland. And it'll have to do for art, because I've showed you a lot of art. But the first poem I'm going to read you is art. So get rid of my old program and read about art. There are many poems in this book that are about art. There's many a passionate love poem in this book. And all the poems naturally in both books are poems. It's poetry. But this book in particular should really be called Art, Passion, Poetics, because I discuss in this book how many different ways poetry affects the heart, the soul, the life, the hearer, whatsoever. So I only write poems, but I think if you are really interested in poetry, not to mention passion, this is the one for you. Anyway, the first poem I'm reading is the one on art, and it's on page 1, which is a good place to start. Art can be a kind of madness, taking us over, making us its own, letting us imagine happy what causes many others to leave us quite alone. That which we conceive done beautifully alienates friends who dutifully say, when we present it to them finished, "Are you sure you've not the essence of the thing diminished?" He who proclaims himself an artist might better, as Houdini did, learn the great art of escape. And isn't that what every artist does? Escaping what is most drear to us to find a private beauty. I think that does it for not only the graphic arts, but the artistic soul, and the person who seeks peace, and anything else you might think of that you see there. Because I don't always understand everything I write. I think that's the madness of being an artist. Did I start out with that line? I might have. Mm-hmm. Yep. Art is a madness, and I don't care what art it is, all artists are mad. But I like to say, divinely mad. The second poem I will read to you in this book is on page 2, Love's Magic. Because after all, this is about art and love, passion. And this is one of the cooler love poems. Love, I'm told, is close to magic, cannot be explained, they say, does not come to one and all, and has a tendency to stray, cannot help at times prove tragic, nor prepares one for a fall. Passion uncontrolled has sway, leitmotif of novels, movies, and the stage, embraces the unloved in its penumbra, unannounced yet tender, sage. Magic love, 'tis stated, openly affects the sated, but tragic love, its alter ego, goes on tiptoe, incognito. Would anyone like to comment on that?
I love it.
I do too. You know, one of the funniest, it was at another JCC last year. I was doing a reading only from this book. And right in the middle of the program, I was very startled. A very nice gentleman, quite elderly, I think in his 90s, began to clap like that. And I thought, oh my God, what have I done? And what he said was, I'm not waiting to clap.
Oh.
I love these poems. So I simply said, I'm so glad you do. Hold your applause, though, until the end. But he was so sweet, and I hope someday, in his hundreds, he'll show up at another poetry reading. Okay, so in this book, Art, Passion, Poetry, the next page is 5. Ars Poetica. Oh, and I have illustrations. Yes, I do. I have 2 illustrations. I'm sort of a nut on lighthouses. I've painted 10 or 12, and I brought these because they were small. I love lighthouses. Who can account for it? It's a symbol to me of hope, finding oneself when one is at sea. Not that I've ever been lost at sea. I've been seasick, but I've never been lost
Have you
at
been to
sea.
Nova Scotia? Have
Pardon?
you been to Nova Scotia and
Yes.
seen the lighthouses on little islands?
Yes,
Kind of desolate.
yes. I had a friend who grew up on the Isle of Wight,
Oh, yeah.
and it had a lighthouse, and I've actually seen a picture of that lighthouse. So let's see, page 5, it's called Ars Poetica. And of course, in Latin, that title means the art of poetry. A poem well written bonds the heart, a vagabond, with the universe, and should sustain the lonely soul, the one who cannot travel free, yet needs to dream, needs to see, longs to do what poems can, reach out freely, self-sustained, yet anchored to eternity. A poem well written's a work of healing, not of vain belief, relieving sufferers from silence, beauty's shade, affirming life, a signature to what was once unsaid, music passing through the skin, sonata, rhyme of spirit, daffodils, and time. A poem is a lighthouse on the shore, beckoning to one who had reckoned on no more direction, safe harbor, joy. A fare thee well in well-being, an envoi. And an envoi in French means a farewell, a sign-off. And many French poems, particularly in the 16th and 17th century, have 2 last lines called the envoi. Goodbye, get out of here, that's all. So French is one of my languages, so I occasionally throw it in. What is poetic speech is on page 22, and this is what I mean when I said that this book, this particular one, will tell you a great deal about aspects of poetry if you are interested in that sort of thing. They don't seem just to stick, however, to one topic, they wander, but it has more of those than the other one, I think. What is poetic speech? Poetry is language beating in the heart. Some say verse, but verse is a poor explanation. For what is that but justification for distorted speech? Poets are not verbal contortionists, nor exist to entertain. They are guides to memory and meaning, pointing to reflections blanched by sunshine, drenched by rain. Walk beside a poet. One will penetrate a kind of wall, a certain emotional impasse, not otherwise pierced at all. Poetic utterance creates a breach between what is and is not conveyed by ordinary speech, builds a bridge for each, and so inspires introspection, ethical reflection upon what can most definitely be grasped by a poet's reach. Poetry plants flowers in the mind where they bloom forever. Metric language resounds in every fiber of the soul's tympanum, to die out never. Poetic speech is how a poet makes each hearer whole, creates new vistas measured by extension, intention, invention, a new scale of immensity, intensity, and awareness. Poetry is theirs.
Hmm?
Anybody want to ask me what theirs is? Or make any other comment?
Tell us what theirs is. Go ahead.
I knew you were going to ask that question. You have just the look of the kind of person who would ask that question. Is he your husband?
Yes,
Am I right?
yes.
Yes. My husband is just like that. I think theirs changes depending on our moods, because sometimes I am not here. I am there. I'm in childhood. I'm on my first date. I'm watching my sister being lowered into her grave. I am there when my first daughter died at 37 on a sweaty bed of stage 4 cancer. But theirs is sometimes also the moment when you walk into the kitchen and first thing you smell is a ripe peach, proof run. And you peel it and you divide it and put it in your morning cereal or yogurt. And you say, could there be anything more delightful than being here, which is there, depending on the moment. Theirs is a word I cannot define for you. It is a word you must feel in your own heart. As the first line of this poem says, poetry is language beating in the heart.
Yes, but Gertrude Stein said there is no there.
Please do not get me started on Gertrude Stein. Although she was a native of San Francisco, a brilliant woman, a collector of the finest art, I do not wish to tell you what I think of Gertrude Stein as a poet or even an essayist. There is always a there. Sorry, Gertrude. Or should I call her Trudy? I used to live in Paris, 2 blocks from her house, where she entertained all the great writers of the 20th century and where she and her brother collected art, very close to the Jardin de Luxembourg. I'm not a fan of hers, yes?
did I hear you say that or you witnessing the early death of a child, equating it to fairness? Is that what you said?
Fairness.
Oh, fairness.
T-H-E-R-E-N-E-S.
Oh, fairness.
Just the reverse of fairness, unfairness.
T-H-E-R-E.
Yeah.
But I was there, unfortunately. You have to be there when the people you love the most pass on.
Well, to change the atmosphere, going from the divine to the ridiculous, you can also define there-ness by its opposition from not there. Like in, we're all here, but we're not all there.
Yes, I've often thought of that myself, especially most recently. Well, it's been an hour and 2 minutes. I could read a few more poems if you want.
We
Would
love
you
it.
like that?
If you have the moment.
Okay, no art here, no art there, and I just finished What is Poetic Speech? No Art for Doubting the Muse, which is the next poem on page 29 in this remarkable collection of my inner doubting. I think all artists have inner doubts. And that's what makes a great artist, or not one, but it does make a great artist, because to doubt is to question and to go beyond what you think you can do. So this one is called Doubting the Muse. And you know, the ancient Greeks had muses for practically everything. I think there were several for poetry. I know there were. Melpomene for tragic poetry, Thalia for country light verse, and I forget who the rest of the girls were. But every writer, and of course all poets, doubt their muse. The act of composition is not all about composing. Inadequacy, lack of talent, talented competitors make writing not an act of steady opening, but quite often one of indeterminate and frequent closing. Closing as a tulip's petals do at night, before the sun upon the morrows kiss them open, a kiss that often makes them start with that self-doubt that makes the loveliest of tulips in the night to pine, console themselves with what seems premature floral decline. We novelists and poets woo our muse, but not with so much confidence we feel our suit is won. We suspect we've but just begun. Whatever triumphs that were ours as writers, we're unwisely authorized to trumpet. Who better than a jilted lover or a slighted rider has reason to believe their muse a strumpet? But even doubting, since as authors doubt we must, we reap benefits in doubt's pursuit. Those who publish thick tomes oft win distinction, bank much loot. But ask a tyro from whom the world's not heard, and he'll say it's doubt that draws him on from word to yet unpublished word. Now I must tell you, this is poetry reading, but last year in August I published a very thick, very funny novel called Candida's Own Italian Renaissance, a sensuous journey through time. And there are 15 Jewish characters, very strange and wonderful people, some very strange, some reminding me very much of a few of my relatives. The rest are a mixture of all kinds of people. But the heroine is a professor of language and Renaissance Italian literature.
Shocking.
So it is a novel that is worth looking at, and you can find it on Amazon.com, or you could buy these 2 copies, they're all I have left, or for practically nothing, a Kindle copy. How many of you read Kindle?
No.
I don't like it either,
I like
but for
books.
Kindle people, these are very popular. Anyway, I have written a thick book, and I say, for some who do that, you bank much loot, but I don't. Let's see. The last poem I'm going to read has an illustration, and it's on page 102. I don't want to kill you with kindness, so we'll make this the last one. Page 102, gladioli, which of course is the plural for the gladiola flower we all so love. It's one of my favorite flowers, and I used to grow them before the gophers did away with my gladioli. And then I had the delight for years of picking big bouquets, putting them in a sizable vase in my hall. Well, let's face it, it's not a formal hall, but it's where you come in into the living room. I call it a hall, wish it were. But I have this very framed mirror, and of course you get double the amount of flowers if you put your flowers in front of a mirror. There's no trick to that. So I thought, well, I love them so, and the gophers have scotched that for me. I'll write a poem on gladioli. And this poem is a poem that starts out about flowers, but be careful, as I warned you. My poems do not all end up where the title suggests. Gladioli. The word derives from gladius, Latin, meaning sword. Not that I plant gladiators in my yard. Yes, their leaves come up sword-shaped, I know, but their blooms are ruffled, feminine, and make a lovely show. Show me the warriors, the gladiators, centurions, doughboys, dog-faced men-at-arms that have our craven politicians, boys, and all reporters charmed, from Herodotus to MacArthur. And I will show you men for whom blood was but fertilizer. I will show you men for whom rotting carcasses were as corn. Men who denied the norms of peace and gardening, which make the heart joyous, spirit buoyant, eye glad of vision, and nose delight in perfume, filling the night garden. Gladioli. I dove into clay pots and planted them to see their swords arise, not to deride them, for I take pride in them. I planted those formal, ruffled flowers, I'll show you, they are really ruffled, I love ruffles, on stalks that never fight, having no business but to glorify beauty. I plant them as a duty to bring them by the armful in ranks that are not harmful, but guaranteed to dispel the slightest hint of gloom and make more civilized my living room. Can soldiers dispel gloom? Their weapons are not like gladioli shoots, who never shoot to kill or wound, which is why I wish the flower that I call my favorite had a claim to a more peaceful name than gladioli.
Which?
So what started out to be a poem about a flower turns out to be what? A poem of social protest. Yes? Question?
You use the term dog-faced boys. Tell me your,
Doughboys and dog-faced men.
that's not doughboys.
Dog-faced men, yes.
No.
You're right, face.
I
I'll
did
tell you.
use that
I will
term.
tell you.
Okay, let me go back.
He was one.
Tell me where,
Dog-faced men,
from what war?
World War I.
No.
What was it?
World War II. Doughboy was the American infantryman of World War I. Why? Because the English soldier made less money than the American soldier, and they cast upon the American soldiers the term doughboy because they made more money. But Dogface was the soldier that was in the mud and the foxholes of both theaters of war in the Pacific and in Europe. That's Dogface.
I didn't know that. Thank
Yes.
you so much for that
So I wonder
explanation.
how you picked that out from that era, I guess.
Well, I have studied a lot of history
Yeah.
and taught a lot of history, but I didn't know that distinction. I'm in your debt.
Yeah.
Well, that's all the poetry I have. I want to ask you, or tell you, that if any of you have fallen in love with one of these books, they are not terribly expensive, and I will sign them. The little paperback book, Streaming Consciousness, is only $15. And both the hardbacks, I will give you at a bargain rate of $22 each. This one was published to sell at $26.95, and you would have had to order it, blah, blah. And this hardback, my green hardback, wherever I stuck it, is a longer book, but I made them reduce.
I think you're wonderful.
Thank you. I think you're wonderful.
I love every page,
Thank you.
but I have to run.
Okay. Anyway, if anyone is interested in buying any of these books, that's it. $22.95 or $22 plain for the hardback and $15 for the softback. So, I'd be happy. Thank you. You've been a remarkable audience. Not only are you very patient, but you've been very good about asking the right questions and amusing questions and informational comments. I appreciate that.